We're going to focus our attention today on the Common App essay, also the Why Our College essay, review some tips, general do's and don'ts about those. We will close out this evening's webinar with a question and answer session, so please hold all questions until the end. It is my pleasure to introduce Bernadette Smith to you. She is our resident expert here, valuable asset to our company in the area of college admissions coaching and beyond. Bernadette not only brings 10 years of school counseling experience to the table, but also 15 years as a writing instructor. Bernadette works closely with families in the college planning process to ensure the best fit for her students. With Bernadette's coaching, her proteges have attended such prestigious universities as Virginia Tech, MIT, Brown University, NYU, UCLA, and Tufts University. Bernadette, thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much for that nice introduction, and welcome to all of you joining us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can begin the presentation. And as Jeffrey mentioned, we're going to hold some questions until the end, and certainly we can dive into some specifics then, time allowing. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and then one moment while I just start the slideshow for everyone. Okay. All right, so as Jeffrey mentioned, we're going to be doing college essay one-on-one. So this is generally an overview of what to expect with the Common App essay and the why this college essay. So certainly I think we could go on for hours about different explanations for different essays, but this is kind of a broken down version so that we can kind of get to the basics of it, planning for it, and kind of how you make decisions about what you're going to write about. And essentially some simple do's and don'ts to help guide you and your students as they prepare for this chunk of the college application process. For me, we'll go through the specific agenda, but just to start, I would say this is my favorite part of the college application process. As someone who loves writing and loves working with my students, this is really a chance for their voice to come out. And odds are, even if it's a student I worked with for 2 years or 5 years, whatever it might be, I end up knowing them better by the end of the time they finish their essay. So it's a unique opportunity for students to express themselves differently and a chance for admissions to hear their voice. So we'll dive right into our agenda. Brief history of the college essay. By no means am I going to bore you with all of the details over the course of the years that it's been in existence. And certainly I think most of us had to write some for college in the past. Go into the specifics of the Common Application essay. This is one that many students, if not all students, encounter across their application process. And we'll want to go through some do's and don'ts for that. Some outlining and basic tips moving forward. The Why Us college essay. That comes up on several, not all college applications. You'll definitely see it with NYU. You'll see it with, Brown University, places like that. But it does pop up more and more now. And then some tips and outlining for that essay as well. And then we'll go through some do's and don'ts for that type of essay. And I also have some examples that I can show everyone as we go through of little snippets from essays I've seen in my career and also from colleagues and admissions. So with that, we will get started. So essentially the history of the college essay, right? So we've all had to do it. We've seen students, I work with students for the last, 10, 12 years preparing this essay. It feels extremely overwhelming at times. It feels like a big hurdle to get over as we enter application season. And it ends up being the thing that probably outside of building the college list takes the most time. The application itself is easier to get through, whereas the essay seems to take up more chunks of time given the amount of proofreading, development of ideas that goes into it. So it wasn't always the case, but back in 1870, Harvard decided to require a short writing piece. And they would change the prompt every year because they were having difficulty making decisions about their incoming classes and felt like they needed to add something else. So essentially, they are the foundation of the various essay prompts we see today. So as your student is frustrated writing this essay, we can tell them to blame Harvard. It is their fault, and this is why we're all writing it. And honestly, it's really just one part of the application packet. It is not more important than another component. Frankly, it's considered on average to be 25% of your application packet. So they're viewing it in that way. We're also seeing that admissions representatives, again, on average, with much smaller schools, they may be able to spend more time, but on average, we're seeing them spend 15 minutes on your entire application. So if that's the case, that's very little time on the college essay itself. So while that doesn't mean it's not important, it also means that it shouldn't take over your student's life in such a massive way, because it will be read in 2-3 minutes once we get to the actual reading of the applications. So hopefully that shows the importance of it, but also that it shouldn't weigh on your students so heavily that it causes any kind of concern. So moving forward, we have the Common Application essay prompts. They release these every year. For the last several years, they've stayed fairly similar, but it's always important to check every year to see how they change. These are absolutely the essay prompts for 2022, 2023. And by no means do you need me to read them all to you, and they're all available on the Common App website. And certainly, even if you just Google Common App essay prompts, it will be the first one to pop up. They always post it in a blog post ahead of college application season. And I think it was 3 years ago that we saw the biggest change to the application questions, and they've stayed relatively the same since. So just to give you an example, the first question on the list is, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful, they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. So as a counselor, my big takeaway from this is that really could be about anything. Background, whether that's your family background, racial background, ethnic background, it could be your background in your town. There's so many things that background can encompass. Your identity, whether that's I identify as a gymnast and that's who I am, or I identify as this gender and this is my journey through this. Whatever it could be, what your identity is made of, your identity could be I'm a daughter, I'm a son. It could be anything. That word means so much. Interest, again, so general, right? And then talent, that could be anything from something measurable, as in we're seeing, again, a gymnast, and I mentioned that because of my stepdaughter, earning certain scores, or it could be someone's talent with art, or it could be their talent in helping people. So again, these essay prompts are not meant to be reductive or restrictive. Most essay examples that we see could fit into a wide variety of these prompts. Sometimes there's one about discussing a time that you've had an obstacle, a setback, a challenge. How did you grow from that? That could be academic, that could be personal, that could be athletics, that could be anything within your family, an accomplishment, an event. How did you develop a new understanding of yourself? Is there a topic that you find so fascinating that you find yourself talking about it and researching it when you're not in school? Anything like that can show the admissions representative so much about your student's voice. And here's the big caveat, just to make sure I mention this to everyone. You only pick one of these. By no means do your students have to write 7 essays for the Common App. Really, we're picking one, and we're writing one for all the essays, for all the colleges on the Common App. So you're not going to pick and choose and write number 1 for Tufts and number 3 for Virginia Tech and number 4 for UVA. We're going to pick one, and that's going to be submitted with all of the college applications once you're ready to do so. That being said, colleges do have their specific own supplemental and informational questions that come in a different part of the Common App, but it's important to note for this, your students should only be picking one. And last but not least, the final choice is topic of your choice. So there really is no wrong way to go. There is no topic that's technically off limits. We're also talking within reason here, of course, but their odds are whatever your student is thinking of writing about could fit into one of these. It's certainly about how you frame it and what you're trying to tell admissions about what you're describing. If it's showing your growth, if it's showing something that you've developed over time, anything along those lines, they're looking for a message that you're trying to give them. And again, given that the changes that have happened in college applications over the last 20 years, we're seeing fewer and fewer interview options, or perhaps they're offered as optional options. So in that case, this is one of the few chances where your child gets to have a voice beyond their transcript, the numbers that are on their application, their letters of recommendation, just a list of their activities. This gives them a chance to put their voice out to admissions and really should have some fun with it. So moving forward, how to choose. I think when we look at that list, it can be daunting. Which one is the best topic for me? How do I move forward and pick the right topic that shows who I am to the admissions representatives? Honestly, like I said, if a student already has a topic in mind, see how it fits into one of the prompts. That's one of the best ways to start. I've had several students this summer who had ideas and were so worried, oh my gosh, I need to write a new essay after they saw the Common App prompts. And that wasn't the case for any of them. Most of what they were brainstorming and coming up with already fit into one of those relatively general prompts. And so when we do this, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If the student has a topic that already shows a great deal about who they are, we can fit it into one of those prompts. Anything about one of their interests. You know, I have a student right now writing about being a swimmer and how she switched to dance and how she felt like she was leaving swimming behind. I think one of the important things with that is she was showing her maturity as she goes through it. And it ended up fitting into multiple categories on the Common App. And so there's no harm or foul when you select as you're submitting which one it falls into. These are guidelines. It's a way that the Common App and the colleges that have agreed to be part of the Common App are showing you what they want to hear and what they want to know. Again, it's a chance for them to get to know the person applying as best they can in a 2-page essay in a 15-minute span of time. The next case is sometimes a student has no idea what they're going to write about, and that's totally normal. Again, it's a daunting task to write this essay that an admissions rep is going to be reading and that you've heard about for the last several years. And sometimes we see that in schools, we're seeing during junior year, students are writing a practice Common App essay in class. And sometimes students end up feeling as though that one isn't really who they are. They kind of did it for class and they don't feel that attached to it. So we might be starting from, level 1 and really just beginning. So if that prompt doesn't jump out as the most attractive to your student, start by eliminating the ones that don't make sense. I've had students immediately go through and say, you know what, this one about challenging a belief or, some kind of topic, that's not really me. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. If you can't think of something off the top of your head, odds are you're not terribly passionate about it, right? So we'll move on to the next one. And so by process of elimination, you may end up with 1 or 2 choices that fit best. But again, topic of your choice remains an option. So this could be, developed through conversation that the student has with you as their parents or with other family members, with peers, with teachers. These can come from anything, but brainstorming ideas and then playing a game of how do they fit into each of these categories and these prompts, or maybe they don't fit perfectly, so they fit into topic of your choice. And again, we want to show growth. The main point of the Common App essay is to show a manner in which the person writing it has grown over time. That can be over a year, over 5 years, over a day. It could be one event that changed everything, but it's about showing the so what of it. And we'll go through that a little bit as we come up on the next few slides. But really, we want to show growth. We don't want to show stagnation. We don't want to tell a story that might be really compelling, but doesn't really tell us anything about the student and how they've evolved over the last few years, or again, over a lifetime. Adolescents go through a lot of changes during their time in high school and in middle school. They learn more about who they are. This is what admissions wants to see. And they want to see how a student has self-awareness and how much they understand about themselves. So again, we just really want to pick a prompt or topic that shows how your child has grown over time. And again, over a day, it could be in regards to anything, whether it's friendship, academics, it could be within athletics, it could be a personal sense of self, the manner in which a child grows to understand or respect something, or to really appreciate something in their life. Again, some of it sounds very vague and very general, but that's the point. It should be your student's story rather than some of the examples you may see online or the typical essays that admissions reps might see. They want to hear from your student. And again, whichever topic you end up choosing, it should demonstrate something that the application alone cannot fully demonstrate about the student. So when I say that, obviously we're not necessarily going into great detail earlier in the application about one of these topics, but if you already wrote a small blurb about the importance of one of your activities, because there's a chance to do that. When you're in the Common App and you're describing some of your activities, there is a chance to kind of put in the importance of it in additional information. When you do that, that shouldn't also be the topic of your essay. So we should be showing them something that they don't know. So For example, we're not going to go over the grades for the last couple of years unless there's a story about how you grew and how you learned how to, access different supports at school, or you learned how to study differently or something like that. But you really got to think about what kind of essay that's going to turn into and how much it's going to tell admissions about you. So we don't want to be repeating the rest of the application. We really want to show something that is not represented fully in any other part of the application itself, where we're seeing grades, activities, teacher recs, community service, things of that nature. So something to think about as you and your student talk about the essay is that it shouldn't be something terribly obvious. And that doesn't mean we're not going to list activities and then write about it. You certainly can, but it just should be clear that this is a chance to show a little bit more. Referring back to the student that I mentioned earlier, so obviously, of course, her activities include swimming and dance, but this was a much greater story about those two sports' impact on her life and her understanding of who she is. So I hope the how to choose makes sense. I think it makes it sound a bit easier than it is, but at the end of the day, and I do tell all of my students, past and present, this, you're not going to pick a wrong topic if you can show admissions something about who you are and how you've evolved as a person. So I very rarely find wrong topics. It just might be that we're telling the story in a way that doesn't demonstrate what admissions might need to hear from you. All right, so beyond how to choose, here's some basic do's and don'ts. We do, and I know I've mentioned this, want to show growth, resilience, or reflection. That's incredibly important. Sometimes students can tell the best story and it can be captivating, but if admissions walks away at the end and doesn't know a little bit more about the student outside of the fact that maybe they're a great creative writer, they might be leaving themselves wanting more. They may say, what do I not know about the person that just applied to UVA? What do I not know about, Mary Jane and her application to Tufts? I wish I knew a little bit more about her. When I'm reading college essays with my students, I put myself in the admissions counselor's shoes. And I say to myself, what do I wish I knew about you so I could better evaluate your application? Here's a big don't. You don't want to write about what you want to do when you grow up. That doesn't mean you can't mention that, ever since you were little, you dreamed of being a doctor, and here's all these, this massive story that was a catalyst for you. You can do that, but we're not framing this as I'm applying to college because I would like to be a doctor and do these XYZ things after I graduate. This is, again, about showing reflection. We want to be able to reflect on why we got there. So again, that's very blunt, but it's not a when I grow up question. We're showing how you're growing up now. Do use your own writing voice and tone. Too often students treat this as though it is the most academic paper they are ever writing. That's not the case. It should sound like the student's voice. It should be their tone. Almost conversational in a sense, the way they would tell a friend a story. Of course, do we want great grammar? Do we want to make sure that everything's formatted correctly? Do we want to develop the paragraphs in a way that's cohesive and makes sense to the reader? Of course. But this is not meant to be a scholarly article. This is certainly meant to be the student's voice. Again, without an interview, this is the one chance for that voice to come through. All right, a big don't here. Do not mention the name of a particular college or university in the essay. As I mentioned before, this essay is going to be copy and pasted or uploaded into the Common App essay portion of the Common App. When that happens and you hit submit for each school, that essay is going to each of those schools. So you certainly do not want to hit submit on UVA and say, I would love to attend Virginia Tech. That's going to show them that 1, you don't proofread. 2, your odds are UVA is not your top choice. And 3, you'd rather be a Hokie than I feel like that's kind of what we're seeing there. And I've seen students make that mistake. And you certainly don't want to be going in and changing it for every school before you hit submit either. This is meant to be a general essay that could be sent to all of those schools. Do seek feedback and a proofreader. Even if you have a college coach, even if you have a guidance counselor or a school counselor with whom you have a great relationship and they've read your essay, your parents have read your essay, seek another person. Another point of view can always be helpful. As a writer and as a writing instructor and working with students, for so long we can spend staring at our own work and not catch something that might be tweaked or better said or better explained. Another set of eyes, another perspective can be really helpful, or it could just catch that one comma splice that we didn't catch the 5 last times we read it. So it's important to have someone else read it to give you some feedback. Your parents know you well, your friends know you well, maybe your counselor knows you well, your English teacher, could even be your math teacher, whomever it is that you trust, get another pair of eyes on it. If you have an older sibling who's already in college, to have them take a peek. Then also, we don't want to reiterate your application or resume. We've talked about this. This is not an opportunity to go into everything you've done since 9th grade. That's not what we're talking about. We're certainly talking about a moment or two. There should be a moment that we're pulling out, whether it's a realization, a major moment in your life, something that you experienced with your family, whatever it is, it should be a moment or two. We have 650 words. That's kind of where we are with this. So, with 650 words, we want to be able to express enough and give enough meaning to it without just detailing a chronological order of events. Here's where we also want to say, don't give too much information on sensitive topics. One, again, we only have 650 words, so we are very limited. And when I say we only have 650 words, I mean, if you hit 651, Common App will not let you hit submit. You literally have to be 650 or under. So in this sense, this one, it comes up rarely, but it's important to note. If there's something that you're describing in your Common App essay that might be concerning or sensitive to admissions, in one example I can give in the past is a student writing about suicidality. That can be something where it could be an important moment to tell a growth story. But if you're not showing the growth, or you're giving so much information that admissions might be concerned, or it might be a red flag of concern there, we want to be careful about too much information on sensitive topics. This one, like I said, doesn't come up all the time. And most of the time, it's a story of growth and resilience and great grit and persistence. But it's just, you want to be careful about the information you're providing. By no means can admissions discriminate against any individual, but you do want to ask, is this something I would tell everyone, or is this something I would tell my friends? Next one, and completely different, have fun with the essay. This is a chance for you to write something that your English teacher isn't looking for you to do an analysis on Moby Dick. This is something that's not a historical paper that you're writing for a push. This is a chance for you to have fun. Make it funny. Admissions counselors are reading thousands of applications. Give them something that they go home and they're like, wow, that one really stood out today. And that might sound hard, but if you're being yourself, it's not going to sound like every other essay they've already read that day. Do not write an essay you'd write for school. I already mentioned that. It should not be like that. Do answer so what? That's the big question at the end. If admissions can answer that question on their own, you've done a good job. So when you're having people proofread it, see if they get the so what moment. See if they feel as though your point was, able to be gotten across to them. That would be important there. Also, don't give it a title. It's not necessary. Admissions isn't looking for it, and it eats up your word count. So that's something really important to keep in mind. So basic do's and don'ts at that point. Obviously, certain other do's and don'ts might come up along the way. And that would, be through the proofreading process and other things like that. But these in general are the big do's and don'ts, the big items that we want to take into consideration as we write the essay and before we submit it. For outlining, there's no one perfect way to do this. We're looking at an essay that's going to be 1.5 to 2 pages long. So we're not writing necessarily a traditional paper. It could be 5 paragraphs, could be 4. Could be 6. It depends on the way you're writing it, if you're including dialogue, anything of that nature. One way we've seen before is like a single story narrative format. This is where the student's the main character. There might be a struggle, a challenge, an obstacle. You're going to tell the story after you hook the reader in, give some information about the challenge and what this means today and the so what. So what did that do to me? What did that change about me? A single story format can focus on an event that's been taking place for years. It could focus on a single day, a single occurrence, a moment in history. It could be anything. You know, I certainly have a lot of students writing about their experience during remote learning during COVID and something they learned about themselves. It could be a moment like that. It could be the span of time between 2020 and 2021. It could be any number of things. For a vignette montage format, this could be, you know, something where there's a short scene and you're providing great details, the scents, the sounds, you know, the scenery around you, really showing your ability to describe. And that it doesn't have to have like this major conclusion that you wrap it all up with a bow. But again, admissions should feel like they know a little bit more about the student. So, you know, that being said, very brief outlines, and they're different by student, different by topic. Certainly, I've gone outside the box with this several times with students when the topic warranted that. But this is certainly one way to start. But again, it's not an analytical essay, so most formats are not going to be wrong. Okay, so this is just a little bit repetitive here. As I've mentioned to you, it doesn't have to be a standard 5-paragraph essay. 4, 6, 8 paragraphs, just keep it to 650 or under. Some people worry if they have too few words in it, perhaps hitting 500, 450. If you still feel like you got your point across, admissions is not looking to see how close you are to 650. If you're still telling your story and they learned more about you, and you feel like adding more would just be stretching it or adding too much detail, don't do it. Trust your gut on that. All right, so again, you don't need me to read any examples to you. I can just tell you these are some examples that, and you can find certainly tons of these available. There are a lot of books out there that you can buy with examples. You know, this is from 50 Successful Ivy League Application Essays. I buy a book on that every year just to see what's out there, and I reach out to admissions to hear what they're seeing and how the writing has changed over the year, because it should change. It should change over time. This is one that goes over in a challenge. You know, I think this one, you know, they went into an Adam and Eve topic, and then they, you know, talked about a conclusion about being sobered by pain. Her father's shining example. And again, I'm showing you 2 chunks of this because by no means do you need to read the entire essay in a short webinar today. But if you see the last sentence, I take earnest and honest stance in life. I know my great worth. I have nothing to prove to anyone, including myself. Strong last sentence. I believe this was a Harvard essay, if I do recall from the book, but I might be wrong on that one. But this is just a chance for you to take a peek and see how somebody introduced this topic, how somebody concluded it. You know, we're seeing, you know, some imagery here. We're seeing a little bit about fidelity and the way that her father left her and how that affected her. So I think that this is one about overcoming a challenge and growing as a person and what you took away from that challenge. That could fit into one of the specific Common App ones about the challenge, but it could also fit into your identity, your background. All right, so now we're going to tackle the why blank college or university essay question. We see this at a lot of schools. This is at NYU, Northwestern, some schools that you may not even heard of, like Framingham State University. You know, sometimes they're going to say, why do you want to attend here? Sometimes they're going to say, why do you want to become a Framingham State Ram? It could be any of those combinations of terms, but 2 examples we have here. Please tell us why you want to attend UMass Amherst. Why do you believe George Mason University is the right institution for you? Fairly straightforward. You know, we're going to see these under custom questions or writing in the school-specific sections of the Common App. Not every school will have them. So it's important to note you're not missing anything if it's not in that section. And if Common App's given you a green check mark, you filled everything in that you're supposed to. But what you need to look for, if it's optional, you need to see if it says that. And my strong advice, really, no matter the case, if it's optional, do it. Obviously, if it's required, do it, you have to. But if it's optional, I strongly suggest that you do it, because you're, 1, showing the school that you're genuinely interested in attending. Even if that's not the case and it's not your #1 school, not filling it in tells them that. And if that ends up being your ultimate choice at the end, or that ends up getting higher on your list of choices, you want to make sure you're showing them that you're genuinely interested in the school. Schools care about retention. Certainly they care about the quality of their applicants and their ability to succeed on campus. But if they have a feeling that you're not terribly interested in the school, that does say something. So I truly, truly recommend that even if the little tiny extra essay about why UMass Amherst is optional, you certainly should fill it out. And maybe you're going to spend way more time on the number one choice on your list, but you should answer this question no matter what. The typical length requirement can be anywhere from 100 to 400 words. And as much as that may sound easy, 100 words is really, really difficult. That's a tough place to really say what you want to say about the school, but they're challenging you with that, and that's on purpose. So, thinking about 100 words, that's 2 sentences. That's you got to get your point across relatively quickly. And that's why we're going to talk a little bit about what to do and what not to do. Do thorough research. This is beyond the basics. This is not just that it's a liberal arts school in a rural community. This is that you're finding out more than what just that little College Board page will tell you about it. You should be really not just on the front page of the school's website. You should be clicking around. You should be finding information. One thing you can do is talk to your local admissions representative. Most colleges have representatives that represent areas. So there's going to be somebody nearby or relatively nearby that's going to be your contact person and probably the one receiving your application or visiting your school or something of that nature. Have that conversation. Ask them why they recommend the school. Ask them what their impressions of it. How did they sell the school to people? That's going to be a big conversation for you to have. 1, pretty good chance they're going to remember who you are. That's great. 2, it could be that they end up reading your application. And 3, they know the school better than most people. They're the ones out there marketing it. They're the ones out there telling students why this would be a great fit for them. Have a conversation with them. You might find out something about the school that you wouldn't have seen immediately on the website. And it might be something that changes your mind about where that school is on the list for you. Take a peek on the website at the course catalog. You may see an amazing course that you didn't realize you could take as part of your major or as an extra elective. Take a peek at that and see what the description of that class is. Sometimes you can find syllabi on the college website. It's not necessarily across the board, but certain times you can find them and really see the way they structure their English comp class or what you're going to see in a later marketing course when you're a junior or a senior. You might want to see the breakdown of what the engineering program looks like. And if that breakdown speaks to you in a way where, okay, at this point, I'm going to be able to do this in the field and I'll have a mentor. These specifics are going to show that you're genuinely interested in the school. You've done your research and they're on your list for a reason. Don't just say you think the campus is pretty or the weather is nice. That's one big no-no there. Certainly I'm from Massachusetts. I would love to go to warm weather, right? But if we're mentioning that, that's just a vacation. That's not a school choice, right? Sure, there are tons of beautiful campuses out there. Stunning. That shouldn't be included in this. Those colleges know their campus is stunning. They've been working on it. They pay landscapers. They know, right? They know that their weather is nice. I think it's Emory University also mentions in there. Yeah, we know it's warm down here. Go on, tell us more. And then mention at least 2 to 3 reasons why you really are applying to that school. This could be something specific about a major of interest. Are they guaranteeing you an internship during your time there? Are they making sure that you're able to get out in the field earlier? Is there something about it being a 6 and 5 major program and that really appeals to you so that you can finish your master's degree immediately following the conclusion of your bachelor's degree and do it in a quicker time and a more financially efficient time? Is there something about a research program that only that school offers or they only offer in a certain way? Is there a study abroad option that you haven't seen at other schools and it's really important to your international business degree that you'd like to get? Is there something that you can explain in much more detail than just mentioning, I like your research program? Can you tell them why it's important to you and why that makes you want to go there? Again, if you only have 100 words, you're probably not going to be able to go into that much detail there, but on some of the longer ones, you really can. I believe on Boston University's application, they give you a decent amount of space to explain that. Other ones, you're going to have to mention it succinctly. If you're a legacy student, you can mention the importance of the family tradition, but this won't be the main place where you mention that. If it is hugely important, I know several generations of Virginia Tech alum that it's very much important to them and crucial to their family, you can mention that, and maybe some traditions around tailgating on game day, and professors that everybody had and different experiences in Blacksburg. That's great. But make sure this is not just throwing in the legacy piece alone. Talk about how it's important to you. Legacy will also come up on another area on the Common App. And you might even just have an experience from the college tour. Maybe you did an overnight and you got to sit in a class and you saw something about the school that you could not glean from a tour, you couldn't get from the website. You just saw something about the community and the way they interact with one another. Another one, do not write that you have a friend attending the college who said you would like it there too. That just means you didn't do your research or you went to a party there. That's really the end of that, right? It might be really important to you to attend a college where your friend is there. That's not something admissions needs to consider. And that's not something you need to add there. That's personal, and that may really weigh for you when you're making your decision, but ultimately it's not really the reason they need to know. Also, do not explain that you heard their psychology major is good. They're all good. Everywhere they're good, right? Or that the school is ranked number 12. This is not a place to put out public knowledge about the school's reputation or ranking, or, every school will say something on their website about this being like part of the 150 best psychology programs in the United States. You mention that, you're just mentioning something from the front page of their website or from a book that you bought. It's not necessarily the reason that you're attending there. And odds are the reason you're attending is not because you want to tell everyone it's the number 12 ranked psychology program in this world. You really don't want to be pointing out their reputation. They're aware of it. They know who they are. So again, basic do's and don'ts. Biggest takeaway here, show why you want to go there and show that you've researched it. That's it. They want to know that you have a genuine interest in the school and that there's something pulling you there. Obviously, throughout your college list, you may not feel that way about every single school. You may have what you regard as a safety on your list that you don't imagine yourself attending. But try and see, if you had to, what would you like there? What is it about the school that is on your list anyway? Is it only that there's a safety, or do they have your major and there's some interesting parts to it that you could really point out? That's one way of looking at it. All right. So again, potential outline, but this goes out the window when it's a 100-word one and you only have so much room. You kind of want an intro sentence, something about what you want to pursue, something that stood out about the school. Reason 1, reason 2. If you have time for reason 3, throw it in, but definitely prioritize the most important reasons. Some kind of reiteration of why it's a good fit. Maybe how you might be able to contribute to the school, what you can bring, what you hope to do once you're there, and how you can help evolve, something on campus. Maybe they don't have a club that you'd like to start there. Maybe you see yourself, expanding something on campus or getting a job on campus, whatever it might be. See how you're going to contribute and be part of that community. So again, very general outline for this, but what I really see it as is it's really dependent on the length asked of you and the specificity of the question, because like we said, we may see a little bit more specifics. Definitely once you select your major, for example, in the college specific section, they may change the question to being like, why do you want to join the School of Liberal Arts at blank university? So again, might be specific based on the school, but general outline that might be helpful. So I have a couple examples here. Tufts every year posts a wide variety of the why Tufts question. And this student last year wrote that I spent my Tufts campus visit in a sociology of war and peace class. The discussion was rich as ideas were tossed back and forth, comparing and contrasting modern warfare in different regions and cultures. The dialogue instantly excited me. But when the students I was sitting with invited me to come to lunch with them to continue talking about the Middle Eastern conflict, I knew that Tufts was the kind of environment I was looking for. An open community that values dialogue and a campus with a strong intellectual pulse, even outside of the classroom. That student covered so much there without mentioning anything about Tufts campus, without saying anything about, how highly regarded the school is. They were there, they had a real experience, they presented it to admissions, and admissions took that to heart. Because that would be very parallel to what the student's experience would be on campus. And so they can see this student actually entering the campus. And so then we have another one from Boston University, and this is one where it goes into the specific college. Attracts me because of its support. You can be blunt and say that, like, its support of interdisciplinary study among its wide array of majors. There's a course offered that combines biology, chemistry, and neuroscience. That connects to this student in particular because they want to do medical research with the brain. So this is a really great way that they're saying, yeah, you have exactly what I want, but there's a really cool way that I can combine it there. And I think that this will help me do so in my future career. So this one was an anonymous one from Boston University. But again, it shows that there's something very specific there. This course that combines biochem and neuroscience. So just two quick examples there, but this should show you that it's really about picking something specific, connecting it to what you need in a campus, and perhaps what you can bring to it. All right, and now we do have time for questions. And I do have some other examples if we need them, but I can also turn it back to Jeff for a second if we're moderating questions.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Bernadette. And yeah, we have arrived at the question and answer portion of the presentation. Questions can be asked aloud. You could either raise your hand, I can allow you to speak through out loud, or you can ask questions through the chat and I can present it to Bernadette.
And certainly take your time coming up with questions or figuring out what you might want to act. I know that was a lot of information at once about 2 different college essays, and you might have questions about supplements on different applications or about the coalition application. So certainly there's a lot going on with writing the college essay, and there's far more writing with it now with all the little extra essays. So please take your time. I'm happy to elaborate on anything.
Jordan?
Yeah, so I'm applying to a school and they have like 4 mini prompts that they're asking. So it's kind of like in the category of like how you said, like, why this school, but it's like not really at the same time. Like, so how would you recommend like I go at that? Because I'm not really like what's the outline or what format should I use to answer those questions? Because I only have 120 words and I feel like there's a lot I need to write.
Okay, so for that particular school, are they putting a word range? Like, are they saying like 100 to 400 words, or what are they giving you for that?
No, I have 120 words and I have 4 prompts to answer, but each one I have 120 words for each of them.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you already had 120 words. So, I mean, this is right. What I mentioned before, it's really tough to be succinct when you want to explain this, but that's what they're looking for. So if you can get to the point and get there right away, this is not about being flowery, right? This is about getting, and I know I don't know the questions that you're mentioning here and how specific they are. Are they specific to the school or?
Yeah, I believe so. So it's Virginia Tech, and it has, their question is, Virginia Tech's motto is UT Proism, which means that I may serve, share how you contribute to a community that is important to you. So I was just kind of wondering like how I like chunk it out and what do I need to like say in each one of those kind of questions.
Sure. And it's funny, I was going to guess it's Virginia Tech. They do have quite a few extra questions on there and they are short. They have kept that question on the app probably for the last 5 to 8 years. That is their motto and they are very proud of it. So I think for that, you need to show how that connects to you. And I know that that's hard in terms of chunking it out in 120 words, but if you could say it in 1 sentence, what that means to you, that's what we're going to try to get across there. And I think, obviously there's a very specific question, but for each of these, it's about being concise enough to tell them what they need to hear. So I know, again, specific questions, but for that one, they're really looking for you to look at the phrase, understand the motto, and relate it to how it's important to you, because that's what they want on campus. So for that, it's, 120 words, that's going to be 2-3 sentences max. So making sure that at least one of those sentences shows how it's important to you, shows how you can act on it. So if we have 2 sentences like that, that would help you break it out a little bit there. And again, for any of the other extra questions with Virginia Tech, and I know there were quite a few there, and they do spend some time reading these ones. I've talked with them a few times and they added them for a reason. They get a lot of applicants and they do want to read these. But if you can, it's about being concise and to the point. Nothing needs to be detailed. This is about you being able to respond to that prompt quickly. I hope that's helpful. I know they're specific questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Bernadette, were there any other aspects of the college essay topic that you wanted to speak a little bit more about?
I mean, sure. I think it really does take some time. I do recommend trying to get as much of it done over the summer as possible. I think when it becomes overwhelming is when the school year starts and you have all this senior year homework, you have all these applications to fill out, and then all of a sudden you find out that there's more supplements than you thought there were. And now suddenly you have 6 more essays to write on top of that AP English essay you have due, and that history essay you have due, and that test in math next week. I do recommend at least having like a working draft before the school year starts. And I know that that can sound, difficult if you're not sure what idea you want to run with. Even if you start to get a running list of ideas and see how they fit into those prompts. And then again, like, as Jordan asked about these extra essays, get into the Common App, add all of your schools. That's the only way you can be 100% sure that you're catching all of the extra essays. That's where you're going to see them. They're not going to send you an email and alert you to it. This is where you got to add your schools to your college list and then go into the college list and click specifically on the college questions and see if it says writing and see if it says, college specific questions. That's going to be really important so that you can kind of see just how many essays you're going to be expected to write within a short amount of time, especially if we're looking at early action, right? We're looking at November 1st, November 15th. That's also going to be right after you just had midterms and you're going to be stressed out. So as much as you can get done this summer would be really important. I also think getting support with it can be really helpful because it does feel daunting. Whether that might be a college coach, whether that might be, a friend that's going through the same thing and you need to share ideas with one another. It does really help because you could stare at a blank screen for a long time, right? And see that cursor blinking in front of you. But talking about it, getting it out, realizing that you have a story and you didn't realize it could be for your college application. So again, I would stress greatly to work on it as much as you can this summer. Really not because I want to be the type of counselor that gives summer homework, but so that you're not stressed out in the fall. Even if you're not planning on applying until January 1st or February 1st, wouldn't it be nice to know that all you have to do is fill in your name, your demographics, have your transcript sent and answer a couple questions about what you want to major in and then hit submit instead of it being 3 weeks before it's due and you suddenly have to write an essay? It could make you feel a lot more relieved. And even if it doesn't end up being the one you choose, you're going to put yourself in a better position having written a rough draft. Because for that next topic, that might lead you to your topic. So I think it's really advantageous. Now we're at like July, towards the end of July. You've got a month and a couple weeks. Really start to take a chance to look at this and set a goal for September 1st that you'd really like to have a solid draft done. And that would be one of my big pieces of advice there, just for the stressors of the fall and the other things that students need to be doing. Absolutely. And if anyone has questions about that, please feel free to jump in.
Of course, raise your hand at any time, or like I said, you can always enter the questions into the chat.
I think while everyone's waiting too, I can put up the Coalition app questions. I'm going to stop my share for one moment here, just so I can pull up that because it was a hidden slide on here. So one second. And you're not going to see much different here. I think it's very much, you can follow the same rules that you would see with the Common App essays themselves. But this would be certainly that you're just going to see, again, 6 options. One of them is topic of your choice. You only pick one, 500 to 650 words. They're essentially the same questions.
Could you put that into slideshow mode so we get a little bit of a better view?
Yes, let me see.
Thank
one
you.
second. There we go. So
Awesome.
Very similar to the other ones you see it. What interests or excites you? How does it shape who you are? That's exactly the same as the one from the Common App that says, what's a topic that you can't stop talking about? So they're all the same. So odds are whatever you're writing for the Common App or reverse, whatever you're writing for the Coalition app, is going to fit in both. So I wouldn't stress about it, and you might not be sure if your school is on that list, and it's very easy to look up. Both the Common App and the Coalition App have lists if you just Google it. You know, and then you can see, you know, a belief or idea of yours that was questioned. That's the exact same question on the Common App. So really nothing to reinvent here. I would even say, God, like 9.9 times out of 10, whatever you write for the Common App is going to fit for this. And even if you had to tweak it a tiny bit, but I can't even imagine that being the case. So again, just a chance to take a peek at this. And certainly school by school, you're going to see supplemental essays. Not all schools have full supplemental essays. So you'll have to look again, once you add them on Common App, you'll be able to see what essays they're requiring of you. But much like Virginia Tech, where you see these extra small writing assignments, you will see those on various schools. Sometimes it's the this college essay. Sometimes, you know, I've seen Endicott College, for example, they have a quote about success and ask you to respond to it. Other times it's a different quote. There's something about like the founder of a university and taking something from their work and responding to it. Those are going to require a little bit of a different approach. Those are going to be, you know, a little bit more of analyzing that quote and applying it to yourself. Similar to questions that you've seen on standardized testing, taking a quote and explaining it in more detail and then bringing it back to you. But again, that depends on the school, and there isn't one perfect outline for all of that because all the questions are different. Again, this really stresses the importance of adding all of your schools, even if you're somewhat unsure if it's going to make your final cut, to your Common App, because that's the way you're going to see all of the essay questions, all of the prompts that might pop up. And you'll notice as you start filling in questions, it might populate another question that wasn't there before. For example, for students that are waiving SAT or ACT scores with proof of a disability, that's going to be a question on there. You're going to check that off. And then it's going to possibly, not all the time, give you a little blurb to write about why. So again, there's different scenarios in which it comes up, and it could come up on the Coalition App as well. And then there's school specific apps, right? Georgetown's not on the Common App. They're going to have their own process. But again, most of the time the essay fits, or you can tweak it a little bit. None of us want you to be writing 18 essays. You know, if you can, it's about showing who you are. If you can do that in one, don't reinvent the wheel. Because if you effectively do so, admissions is going to see that. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that in additional detail. Definitely appreciate it. All right. Any other questions or thoughts? All right. All right. We're running a little bit short on time. I know that we had built in a little bit of extra time to make sure that people did have questions or things they'd like to bring up. You know, we had provided the opportunity to do so. But thank you for being with us this evening. You know, we really hope that you found our presentation today enlightening and worthwhile. And thank you very much, Bernadette, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today. And yeah, thank you. Again, thank you everyone for attending, and everybody have a great night.
Thank you all so much. And thank you, Jeffrey.
Of course.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.